Welcome to our Strong Voices podcast, the show where we speak candidly about concerning things in our world, the seasons of life as a parent, and how to engage in hard conversations with our kids. I'm Dr. Ashley Barnes, Chief Executive Officer at Lena Pope.
And I'm Dr. Victoria Sendejo, Chief Engagement Officer at Lena Pope. As TikTok challenges have resurfaced on social media, we wanted to speak about their popularity amongst children and teens. Increasingly, we are seeing these challenges go from harmless pranks to having seriously damaging outcomes.
Today, we're joined by Scott Waters. Scott is a TraumaWise Consultant for MHMR of Tarrant County. He came to the agency 3 years ago with 16 years of TraumaWise experience in residential care using trust-based relational intervention, or TBRI as most know it. He has been a TBRI practitioner for 16 years and a TBRI mentor for 11. He has also been a practicing therapist for 9 years. In his spare time, Scott loves to travel and to teach. When he gets the chance, he combines these passions by facilitating training sessions across the country. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
It is so nice to have you here with us this afternoon.
Yeah.
We have kind of a topic that has been on the forefront of the news and in people's minds in various ways. You would think TikTok is relatively benign, but apparently not so.
Yeah, I mean, with anything that you're dealing with the internet, I mean, it's unmonitored. And so that's something that we as parents have to really monitor and pay attention to, especially when our teens are involved in things that we may not even know that we're aware of.
What are some of the hazards that you're identifying that parents should be thinking about?
Well, when we talk about hazards, I mean, there's always good, bad, and ugly when we're dealing with the internet or with TikTok or any social media. I think the biggest hazard that we need to be aware of is our teens' developing brains. The thing that's happening within their brains, specifically in this part of the brain right here, the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex goes through a reconstructing process starting about the age of 10 or 11 all the way to about the age of 25 to 30. And in that reconstructing process, the parts of the prefrontal cortex, which it really controls things like sense of self, empathy, impulse control, and judgment. That's a little haywire. So we've got to be aware that that's going on. And so when that's happening, and then you combine something like a TikTok challenge or something to deal with peers, it changes the whole dynamic. So the biggest hazard is our teens' brain and what our teens' brains are exposed to.
So basically, they see things on the internet and they're drawn to it. Is it that they're showing off or that they're trying to fit in, or what is it in conjunction with the impulsivity and the lack of judgment that draws them to do things that an adult would consider risky or even foolish in some cases?
Right, and so there's other parts of the brain that are also going through a pruning process. Dr. Dan Siegel writes a book called Brainstorm, and Brainstorm is a must read for anybody who is the parent of or is dealing with or is an adolescent. And again, that's the age of between 10 to about 25 to 30. And so in that book, he describes really 4 main needs of adolescents. The first main need that they have is for new things. Novelty seeking is what he calls it. So looking for new things to do. The other one that he has is a need for social engagement. And what we're talking about is social engagement away from the familial engagement into other engagement. And it doesn't necessarily need to be peer engagement, but it's anybody besides what they've known before. So it's kind of mixed in together with that novelty seeking. And then the third need has to do with intense emotional reaction. We see that a lot through anger, which is really seems confusing. However, really what it has to do is the scope and the breadth of our emotional well-being and our emotional being grows. This is most signified in the Inside Out 2 movie, right?
Yes, okay.
Where she goes from those 5 basic emotions to, I guess she gets additional 3 or 4. I can't remember how many. If you follow Dr. Brene Brown in her book, Atlas of the Heart, she actually describes 2,000 human emotions that we're opening up to and around the age of 10 or 11 or 12, which is extremely overwhelming. That's why it looks very anger-inducing, because it's so much, it's so fast.
I have never heard it described that way. You would think that that would happen in the elementary age or even in the toddler stage when they're crying a lot and tantrums, and so they're only developing the base, basically.
Absolutely, yeah.
I see, okay.
Yeah, when I work with younger kids, 4, 5, 6, when I'm talking to them about their emotions, I'm really describing 4 basic emotions, which is happy, sad, angry, and afraid. Disgust is a one that they show in the Inside Out movies, which I think is valid, but I think it deals more with the fear in that. So I'm describing those 4. When I get to dealing with teens and adolescents, I get my emotions wheel out and show them all the various, because we're looking for ways to describe it. So you mentioned toddlerhood. So toddlerhood, one of the biggest struggles with toddlerhood is we have all these thoughts and feelings that we can't verbalize.
Yes.
Same way with teens. They have all these thoughts and feelings that they can't verbalize because they haven't had the language nor the capacity for the language prior to that. Yeah. So that's the third. And then finally, the fourth one is creative exploration, which can be really, really cool when we're looking at things such as entering drama club and things like that. Here in Texas, 7th grade is when we get all the extracurriculars, right? So it's perfect timing. Well, it could also be creative exploration to be sneaky and to get my needs met if my needs aren't met, or I feel like my needs aren't met by my caregivers.
So would you say that enrolling your kids in things like art and journaling and those things is a must?
I wouldn't say a must, because you want to follow your child's lead,
okay,
right? And so getting them exposed to those different things, asking them, and really what it boils down to in watching for this, because throughout the entire process, we as the parents are the safe base for our kids, no matter if they're the toddler, and where they're constantly coming back to us, or the teen where they're giving us that ambivalence, that push-pull, and what they're saying is, I hate you, don't leave me, right? Because they're trying to explore the world, but at the same time, that world is scary, so they want us to be constant. So if I'm involved in things and I can invite my teen to it, sometimes that's the drive that they need. Yeah.
Can we go back and really give our audience a definition of what a TikTok challenge is, especially for younger parents who aren't familiar with all the trends that are coming up and that their children could be exposed to earlier than they anticipated?
Right, yeah. So a TikTok challenge basically is a challenge that's put on by a brand, okay? And so a brand could be a corporation or it can be a person. Social media is all about branding. It's putting my name out there. So when these challenges are put out there, they're put together by a brand to promote the brand. They typically aren't done for the well-being of the consumer.
Sure.
Right? And so they can be as simple as the Chipotle guac dance challenge, where they do this and they hashtag guac dance, and they do a dance, things like that. Or it can be as harmful as some of the trends that we've seen, that when you really get back down to it, the trends have been around for ages. They're just in a different format now, such as cutting your buddy's legs out from underneath them while they're jumping in the air, or something like that. That's something that I was familiar with when I was in middle school, but I'm not going to date myself, but I will. I'm 53 years old. So back in the 80s, we just didn't have video to capture all that, right? Yeah, yeah.
So who is behind those types of brands? Are we talking about companies? Are we talking about individuals who are trying to seek popularity in high school?
Yeah.
Where is that coming from?
Very, very much people who are branding themselves and trying to seek popularity through either getting people to do these challenges or to get the viral status going on. Yeah.
And so the viral status leads to payment. So if they get enough followers doing this, then they get paid?
Yes, they
even
can
if
get
it's
paid.
harmful?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Now, again, if it's harmful, what is the definition of harm when it comes to a social media company?
And
right?
is each person responsible for their own behavior, and so they don't end up taking accountability for any of it?
That could be the case. Yeah. Now, I'm sure that there are cases out there where the person posting the challenge may have received some sort of consequence for their challenge. However, again, it's an unpoliced place out there, the internet.
So as a parent, how do we identify whether our child is most likely to be on initiating and daring kids to take on the challenge? And on the other hand, how are we seeing our kids who are most apt to engage and want to seek that same level of popularity or status and want to be joining in the challenge?
I would think that most kids would want to join in certain challenges, depending on what those are. So for me as a parent, the best thing that I can do is monitor what my kids are watching and what they're consuming on social media, plus who they're messaging and things like that, to see what they are interested in, what they're engaged in. There are some really fun challenges out there as well. So if I see that my child is engaging in certain challenges, that might be something that I either encourage them to consider, such as a dance challenge or something like that, or engage in with myself. I've been roped into a few TikTok challenges where I've been either the straight guy holding, the space for people to dance around me, or been suckered into doing a little bit of dancing myself, which I don't do very often.
And so you talked about being the one that is prompting the challenge.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Also,
Yes.
so as a parent, you don't have to sign off on these things. How do the kids get the money if the parents aren't involved in this in somehow?
I'm not sure exactly how that all works, when it comes to TikTok, but I do know that it's not just the money that they're seeking, right?
It's the status.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and that for many kids is more important than the money involved.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Prestige.
So this is almost like a different level of bullying, if you will.
Could be.
And in bullying at school, when you see that happening, you have people who don't necessarily prevent it from happening, and they're on the edge serving as a bystander. And I think that what I'm seeing is that there are also bystanders on these TikTok challenges where they're not necessarily engaging, but they know who is amongst their friend circle.
Right.
How do we let our children who may be the bystanders know that if something is dangerous, they need to report it to either their parent or an adult at school before something drastically wrong happens?
Yeah. And that really is determined by how safe do they feel reporting that. If we are the safe base and we respond to them, and I know this is hard because these are our kids and they're doing stupid things, how we respond to them doing things that are dangerous, how we receive them when they come to us. Kids are constantly testing us to see how we're going to respond. Are we going to respond in anger? Are we going to respond with empathy? Are we going to respond through giving them punishment? Or are we going to respond by giving them a listening ear? And so the more that we can provide a listening ear, the better off we are. There are going to be consequences to any behavior. Consequences happen. But if we're going to continue to be the safe base, we have to be that safe base for our kids. And we hope that we're the safe base not only during the teen years, but on beyond as they continue with adolescence, possibly beyond our living situation or anything like that. So the safe base continues. It's how we monitor ourselves and are the safe base for them when they come to us when they make mistakes. That's going to be the biggest challenge. And that would be something that I would challenge the people with younger kids to monitor,
And I would think that if I had a younger child, that I would want to get ahead of it.
Absolutely.
And so
That's what I was
how do we get ahead of what those TikTok challenges may be coming on the horizon before they get to the kids? If we can just stay at least half a step ahead of them, we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to dealing with emotions, right? If my child has strong emotions such as anger or sadness or things like that, what am I doing with my child during that time? Am I doing what we call a time in or a time out? Is it go fix your face and come back to me when you're ready? Or is it let's work through this hard emotion together? That's going to be the biggest difference, because when it comes to dealing with hard emotions, if you're sending your child away, what's our teens going to do when they're dealing with hard emotions or big things?
They'll close up.
They're gonna go away because that's what we taught them. But if we taught them to draw near and come to us, that's going to be the biggest thing that
That's
we can
huge.
do. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I also heard you earlier talking about engage with them in a positive way. And
Yeah.
in doing that, set some parameters about what you think is a legitimate TikTok that the family and the child might enjoy versus ones that become dangerous. How would you couch those? What kind of language would you use with your child when setting those limitations that would be understandable given their level of brain development?
I think just talking with them. Are you talking about with younger kids?
Well, all along the
Yeah.
continuum. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you say do this but not that? It's okay. We're all going to do it as a family. But you said, Mom, I could do it. And now we're in this muddy territory where you've condoned it in a way,
Right.
but not that one.
Right. But I think having that conversation is vital because if we're doing these TikTok challenges where everybody's involved, let's say we involve the whole family has to give consent, including me. So I've got to be aware of what I'm willing to do and what I'm not doing. Like I said, I got suckered in. I get suckered in.
Right.
I got convinced to join those types of dance challenges. So we all have to give consent, and we can give the reasons why we don't want to participate in a certain challenge or anything like that. The interesting thing about teens is they understand the risks. Unfortunately, as that prefrontal cortex and that pruning goes, the reward seems so much higher.
Yep.
Okay, and so rehashing the risk doesn't really do any good when you're talking about something that they made a mistake on. Okay, they made a mistake. They thought it was going to have a huge reward. It didn't. We don't have to rehash the risks. So when it comes to dealing with upfront, what I'm willing to participate, I might lay out the things that I might see are the risks to that. Somebody might get hurt, things like that, even things that we may not imagine. So we've got to get creative on seeing, listening to that gut, our inner voice, that part of us is saying, this isn't there's something about this. What is it about it that we want to be aware of?
Right.
You know? And so we have to dig deep. We can't just be saying, I told you so, or because I said so. It has to be more along the lines of, I see this as unwise because of this and this and this could happen, right? And then we're allowed to make mistakes too. So we can get into involved in something and go, hold on a second, pause. This doesn't seem like it's worth doing for us or worth doing for you because I can see some of these risks. So we're allowed to change our minds as well.
So the real life action, I'm doing it, we're doing it, here's an example of a good experience and one
Right.
with consequences.
Absolutely.
And so you said something interesting, that they know the risk. And so what happens when they engage in something that does have really grave consequences? Say that again, because I got a little confused. You don't go over what the risk was and you messed up. You then instead do what?
Basically, and I'm going to reference another Dan Siegel book that he wrote with Dr. Tina Payne Bryson. It's called No Drama Discipline. And they lay out a very simple formula for dealing with after the incidents. They ask 3 questions. What happened? What could you have done differently? And what do you need to do to make it right? And these are the 3 questions that we can ask them. So it allows us not to have judgment when we're dealing with this. It doesn't give us a whole lot of room for I told you so. We might have to explore what we could have done differently with them, but then really listen to what they're coming up with when it comes to what do we need to do to make this right. They may go over the top with that one to do some sort of self-flagellation or self-punishment. And we can make it more simple as like, how about we do this to make it right? Whether it was harming another person, what if we write an apology? What if we do something nice for them instead of giving up your phone for a month, you know, like they might try to bring. So just asking those 3 simple questions, and again, listening without judgment. There's a need behind every behavior. That's for littles, for teens, for me, for you. There's a need behind every behavior. We have to identify what that need is. And
do we try and identify it, or do we ask them? Because they may not know, right?
Yeah, we have to do the work.
Okay.
You know, and so we have to figure out what that need is. We may or may not ask them what the need is, because they may not have the capacity for that. Remember that prefrontal cortex, that
Right.
judgment and impulse control, which it controls executive functioning, is still not online. So we have to do the work.
And so if you're engaging in the conversation, I'm just kind of trying to play it out in my head. So I know you're trying to fit in, and this was not something that you wanted to see happen as a consequence. I have plenty of friends, Mom.
Yeah,
I fit in just fine. You think you know everything.
right.
I've been around a couple of teens, can you tell? But you know, you probably are pretty accurate in your evaluation of the situation, but they deny it and come back at you. How do you engage? Do you then come back and say, I must have misunderstood, tell me what you're experiencing? How do you come back around when they deny your assessment of what motivated their behavior?
I don't always involve them in my assessment.
Okay,
Okay?
don't say it.
My assessment is for me.
I got you.
Okay.
Okay.
I may involve them if I feel like it's appropriate.
Okay.
If I identify that there's a need of social engagement with their peers, they're just doing it in a time and place that I don't like,
Okay.
or maybe risky for them, then I try to find social engagement in a time and place that may be more beneficial to them and me, such as invite your friends over. Let's go do this with your friends, and involve other seemingly risky things, such as go-kart racing, right? Which is fairly safe, but feels risky.
Right.
Challenge courses. I love challenge courses. I was a challenge course facilitator for 12 years when I was in residential. And we get up on a high course, and it just sucks the fear factor comes in, and it
Yeah.
seems risky, but when you look at the way it's all set up, it's
You're
not.
fine. Yes.
So give them that seemingly risky type of experiences. It really does help engage those needs and invite their friends. Fit them all in, because the more of those 4 basic needs that you can fit in, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, I think that's really key, because as much as we fight becoming our parents, we end up saying things that we're like, oh, I didn't mean to sound like that, or I didn't mean to say that.
Right.
And it comes out very off-putting to kids, which is very easy to do with preteens and teenagers who don't want to hear what we have to say
Absolutely.
anyway.
Yeah.
So I really like that you're inviting kids over to the house and inviting them to go and do something like go-kart racing.
Yeah, and it could seem counterintuitive, right? Because if we think, well, the friends are the problem. No, it's not the friends that are the problem. We have to recognize that the friends are the okay. It's kind of like when I'm dealing with aggressive children, and teens especially, right? If they're physically aggressive, they don't know how to control that need that they have, which is a natural sensory need called proprioception, deep muscle pressure. What I typically encourage families to involve themselves in is get their kid involved in martial arts or in boxing, and they're like, but hold on a second, why do I want to teach my kid to punch better? And I'm like, no, you're not teaching him how to punch better. You're teaching him how to use his skills controlled and control those situations. And that's really what we're trying to do, is we're providing controlled situations for our teens to meet those needs for novelty, for creative exploration, for social engagement, and then involve our emotions as well. Yeah.
So, Vicki and I were talking earlier about a challenge in which children are injuring their facial structure in order to have a different, or what they perceive as better look.
It's called look maxing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, as a parent, you hear those things and you think, my child wouldn't do that. It's actually, is it breaking a bone?
It's either breaking a cheekbone or a jawbone to create a more defined look, is what they think, but they're fracturing their facial bones.
Right.
And I just can't imagine the pain that they're enduring during the healing process. And then they're hoping for a best case scenario that they're going to have an improved jawline or look.
Yeah.
But aren't they having bruises that the parents can see that there's something going on, or maybe they can't chew anymore? My fear is that they will break an occipital bone and damage their eyes.
Any of them, or your jaw, or there's huge consequences.
Yeah, and I think that
to
a lot of parents definitely don't know that. I've talked to some individuals, some teenagers who said, no, it's really not that widespread, but they definitely knew what I was talking about.
Right.
Parents had no clue, and parents' automatic reaction was, you better not be doing that, or who is doing that? Do you know somebody who's doing it?
Yeah.
And their answer is, well, yeah, but I'm not going to tell you.
Right. The better question is, why would somebody do that? That's where we get down to, if I discover that my teen is producing, trying to do something like that, what's the root? What could be the root behind that? It's, look, I want to look different. And what's that really boil down to? Has a lot to do with self-worth. So what I've found in my experience working with teens, young adults, and people of all ages, really and truly self-worth boils down to my ability to have my needs met and my ability to be delighted in. Okay, that's something that we get way early. When our very first needs of those fears of being born, you know, I went from 98.6 to 70 something degrees, now I'm back to 98.6-ish, right? I went surrounded by your heartbeat to chaos to now I've got your heartbeat in me, right? It's that same, I'm tight, loose, now I'm tight again. So even that first moment where our need is specifically met, but then also the birthing parent looking at their child for the first time with pure and utter delight. That is a human need that continues throughout our lifespan, okay? Now, when a baby is this old, it's the caregiver's responsibility to meet the needs and delight in them. I'm 53 years old. Who's responsible for meeting my needs? Me. Who's responsible for delighting in me? Same person. It's not my wife's job. We've been married for almost 25 years, right? It's still my responsibility. Teens are going from somebody else to now me, but then also have my kids, the ones that are under the age of 18 that I'm responsible for. So they're going through the process of discovering who out there might they want to help meet needs and delight in. So it's extremely confusing process as well. Okay. And so meeting needs and delight is one of the main factors in knowing our worth, because infants realize, oh, my need is important, I'm delightful, somebody already told me. But we tend to forget that as teens because we're trying to do it on our own and we stink at it. We're awful at it. We try really hard and so it's a stumbling and it's a fumbling. So if we can be aware of that need out there as well as parents, we can. And then help them identify ways, or us identify ways that we can meet their needs and delight in the fact that they're trying their best. They really are. They're just being kind of dumb about it, you know?
So you said that going about those questions about who's doing it or why are you doing it or why somebody, you said those were not good questions. So what are some good replacement questions?
So again, those are okay questions. I think the better question to figure out in our brain and maybe even ask our teen is, why would somebody do that? Okay. And if they can say, well, they don't feel good about who they are. Okay, what would make them feel better about who they are versus breaking their face? That would be probably the follow-up question. Because if my teen's thinking about it, then we can engage a conversation about somebody else while they're talking about that other person, while they may be talking actually about themselves. So we could get a little bit more involved in that, because I want to know what my teen really thinks about these. And if they're like, yeah, that's stupid, I don't know why anybody would do that, that would be great. If another teen might, or if my teen might say, yeah, I can see why somebody would do that, that might give me a little bit of clue, okay? Now, we're also talking about a shift from a parent's generation, and I've got to understand that I'm a little bit older than most parents. My youngest child is 24 at this point. So I've got to realize that this is not the type of thing that we generally considered in our generation. We often think that looks had to do more with females than males. That's not the case anymore. You know, the males increasingly are more focused on body image and have body dysmorphia, and you've got to be aware of those things. So if what we can realize is there may be more behind it, which may mean that we need to seek additional resources, such as therapy through MHMR, through Lena Pope, or resources. We do have resources out there for specifically teens and young adults, all the way up to the age of about 25, and then adult services from there. So finding those additional resources may provide us some help as well, because there's like a whole host of things going on with our teens right now that we've never even considered.
Sure.
You know, my youngest child was not my youngest child was 18 years old when he started driving. I got my driver's license on my 16th birthday. That was the rite of passage.
Yes.
Right? But the whole purpose of me driving was that social engagement. So I can go hang out with my friends.
Right.
Why do I need to socially engage by driving if I've got access on my phone?
All the time.
All the time, right? But then there's this other part of social media that kids are kind of wary of. So we talk about the risks. However, kids are less willing to take risks because what happens if they make a mistake on social media?
Everybody's going to know. They're going to be embarrassed and shunned.
There goes the social engagement piece, right? And so everybody is going to know, and so they could get canceled. And so they're less willing to take risks, even those simple risks that we might have taken when we were kids, like me driving. My youngest child was terrified of driving, still is, hates driving.
And driving is a whole nother thing these days, though.
It is, isn't it?
Especially in this area.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but those are controlled and healthy risks that create long-term productivity and maturity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yet they're taking these other risks that are not in their best interest, and you're kind of summing that up to say that that has to do with their judgment and ability to really think through which risk is healthy and which risk is not.
Yeah, my mom used to say my picker was broken. My ability to pick things that were safe for me is broken, and it kind of is. We've got to be aware of that. And so if our kids are engaging in risky behavior, then again, seek that stuff that is controlled, that we can be a part of, such as driving. You know, if my kids out there wanting to do these challenges, then let's take them on a driving challenge and you know, get out there and get them behind the wheel or get them in the driver's ed and to get that additional challenge. It doesn't have to be just social media driven. That's where it's starting. That's where we're finding the problems, but then we can come up with solutions that include the entire world. Yeah.
You know, you're seeing a lot on social media about parents who may not have been engaged all along, but now their child has engaged in something with grave consequences, whether it's the death of another person or involvement in something where someone was seriously injured. It's all over the media. People are judging the parents and how they respond to that circumstance. In some circumstances, it is that they believe that the child is excusing the behavior or not holding the child accountable or siding with the child even though they're going to jail. At what point do you defend against these public displays of this is the consequence, whether it's jail or expulsion or whatever it is, versus the accountability? Where is that line? I love you no matter what, versus you are accountable for this and so be it.
Yeah. Just because I am the safe base doesn't mean that my child is always going to be protected by me. Circle of Security Parenting is a parenting tool. I'm actually a facilitator for Circle of Security Parenting, where it talks about kids have that safe base and then they go out and explore the world. We do our best to protect our children while they're exploring the world, but we don't have full protection, especially as they enter adolescence. And so for me to be the safe base doesn't mean I can always protect, but I can still always be the safe base. They can make a mistake and have real world consequences. And we know for a fact that the real world consequences are not easy. They're pretty harsh at times. We may or may not agree with them, but they are the real world consequences. I know of a young person who did a dine and dash. This was before social media. And one of the restaurant employees approached them, latched onto the back of her car, and ended up falling off the back of her car and dying.
Oh my goodness.
That person, the driver, went to jail and went to prison because of that. It was manslaughter. Okay, over a dine and dash. And you never would have guessed that type of thing is. The parent never would have guessed that type of thing would have happened.
Right.
But the parent's job is to be the safe base during that and say, I will still be your parent. But if you're going to prison, I mean, you've got to go to prison. I will visit you as much as I can. And that, so it's like we kind of have to come to that reality sometimes with our kids, that we can't protect them from everything. They're going to be adults at some point, and they're also going to be making their decisions. So I think it's harsh to judge those parents on their reaction because it's so complex. There's so many different factors involved, and we don't always know that relationship. It's kind of like judging a parent in Walmart whose toddler is having a meltdown in aisle number 23, right?
Right.
It's just, what do you do? And so sometimes the best thing we can do for parents like that is just approach them with empathy and compassion and let them know that parenting is really hard. Sometimes that's all it takes. And try to support them as much as we can.
And so I heard you say, do not excuse the behavior.
Of course not.
Support them in figuring out how to navigate the consequence that they will experience. Let them know you still love them.
Yeah.
But this is the way that this is going to go. So the bailout system, so many parents are, I can fix this for you. It'll change the rest of your life. I can't believe, next time you're not going to do this. I'm just going to fix this for you. I'm going to call my friends. And, you know, I mean, I think we all know families like that, that are really trying to protect their kids. What kind of consequence does that have? Or is it the right thing to do when you have a child who's in a first-time situation?
Yeah, every situation is different and every parent is different. So I'm not going to throw judgment on a parent who tries their very best to protect their child and provide that safe base for them.
Right.
Okay. However, we've got to know, we've got to ask ourselves that question. What am I teaching my child? That money can make everything disappear, or that privilege can make things disappear. And we've got to monitor that. We've got to monitor what our privilege is, what our capacity is that other families may not have that for. And so life can be the harshest and best teacher sometimes. And so we've got to be aware of that. So I'm not going to cast any judgment on somebody who's trying to help out their child the best that they can. But at the same time, we've got to ask ourselves that question. Really, what is it? What is my behavior here in this situation teaching my child?
That's great.
Yeah.
I appreciate that reminder to not pass judgment on when you see a toddler screaming down the grocery store aisle. You don't know what happened before, you're just walking into the screaming. You don't know if that child has another diagnosis. You don't know how stressful it's been, if mom's going through something or whoever's the adult with them are going through something. So that's a great reminder. So along those lines, what is something that you could tell our audience as a piece of advice moving forward? I like what you said about empathy. I like what you said about just being mindful about having empathy towards others, but what is something else that you could leave, that one piece of advice to our audience members?
And I'll just remind people that, again, that sense of empathy isn't happening very well in our teens, because that's happening in the prefrontal cortex. So when parents come to me with, say, my kid's going to be a psychopath, I was like, hold on a second. Just because they don't feel empathy at age 13 doesn't mean that they're not going to have it as adults.
Okay.
So have empathy and compassion for ourselves, okay? So don't forget to be the safe base is what I would remind parents. And what does it take to be a safe base for my kiddo? What part of mindfulness do I need to have? What do I need to know about my worth as a person, as a parent? The biggest thing I try to tell parents is your child's behavior is not an indicator of your worth. It just isn't. Sometimes our behavior is an indicator of our worth, because we all have our bad days.
Right.
Dr. Karen Purvis, one of the co-founders of TBRI, used to call it the instinctual drift. During my worst moments, where I go back to my instincts and parent in a way that I'm trying to get away from. It happens to the best of us. But knowing my worth, knowing my value, what does that do? That does so many things for me. It helps me become the safe base for my child. Plus, it gives them an indicator of what they can seek and what they can look forward to as an adult to know their own worth. So know your worth.
If you were to sum up 3 things that we want to send our parents and our kids even who watch this, take-home message, what would you say are the 3 most important things to know about TikTok challenges and how to navigate that?
Identify the need behind the behavior, not only for the person who's offering the challenge, but for if I feel the desire to take on that challenge. What is the need behind my behavior? What is the need behind that behavior? As I mentioned before, it could be the need behind their behavior is to promote their brand. And do I really want to be a promoter of this particular brand? The other thing to be aware of is what can we do together to help meet that need? What can I do as a parent? What can I do as a child or a teen to help meet that need in either this particular format or in another way? And then finally, know your worth. Do your best to know your worth. Do the hard work of it is. It sounds simple, but it's not easy at all. Yeah. One thing that we do try to promote, I'm a facilitator for a program called Making Sense of Your Worth. It was developed by another TBRI practitioner and mentor, Cindy Lee in Oklahoma City. But that's something that I'm a facilitator for her program, the Halo Project, but I'm also a facilitator for MHMR. So we try to promote making sense of your worth because that's a path to know your worth. But even without that, the hard work of recognizing and realizing that no matter what I do, no matter how I behave, I have infinite worth as a human being.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for spending time with us this morning. This has been really enlightening. I learned quite a bit, and I'm interested in some of the programs that you talked about.
Okay.
I'd love to know more about them. Where can people find the information?
You can go to our website, which is mhmrtc.org.
Okay.
So that stands for My Health, My Resources, TarrantCounty.org.
Okay.
So you can certainly reach out to us that way. We also have ways that you can find about our teen programs on there, also our adult programs that we support parents with and other adults, even folks with intellectual disabilities. We are the community behavioral health provider for this area.
And if I call and say, my child is engaging in really risky things on TikTok and on the internet, and I'm really worried, will they know how to direct that parent to the right place if they just call the main intake?
The main intake. So we really have, it's one front door for each of our age groups. So we have one front door for our kids 6 and under, and then, or 5 and under. Then we have another front door for our 6 through 17, and then another one for our adults. But if you go to our website, it's all right there. If you call one of those and you're at the wrong place, they will direct you to the right place. So don't worry about that. Our navigators are extremely skilled to point people in the right direction, whether within our services or within our partner organizations like Lena Pope. We try to make sure that we're finding the right place. If we go out and try something and it doesn't work, call us back, we'll try something new.
Could they call and say, I want to see that guy, he knows so much, I want specifically him? Is that an option? Or
possibly, yes.
Okay.
I'm one of 2,000 employees at our agency.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there a waiting list? I mean, if it's not for any specific person, could I get right in if I'm really concerned about my?
Yeah, we might have a brief waiting list for certain services, such as therapy. It's hard to find therapists in our area, and we're a nonprofit, just like everybody else. Plus, also have to do a little bit with government oversight. So getting therapists is difficult sometimes. But we do have programs called Family Intervention for our young kids and teens. Where they can provide intervention services while they're possibly waiting for therapy, or even instead of therapy. We found in many cases just working with the family interventionist builds that. It's the relationship that heals. And so we try to help promote that relationship with our staff and our employees to be able to take on with our patients. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing your insights and enlightening us.
Good, glad to be here.
We'll be back soon with another honest conversation. Until then, take care of yourselves and your families. If you enjoyed our episode, be sure to like and subscribe. If you have a topic you want to hear about in a future episode, tell us about it in the comments. Together, let's build stronger families, one conversation at a time.